whether you are attending in person on site or you are on Facebook. So welcome everyone to come to attend this sharing session by Mr. David Brown. Okay, Mr. David Brown is one of our outstanding alumni, actually, from the University of London LLB program, and also is helping us as a part-time teacher, not just only in law, but also in other areas, as far as I know. So David is now practicing as a barrister in Hong Kong, and I think he has a very unique kind of experience that can be shared to people who are interested in the program, in the London program. Now we have different pathways entering that program. No matter you take the Certificate of Higher Education, which requires you no formal entry qualification, or whether you just enter as a degree holder through the graduate entry route or the standard entry route, just holding a sub-degree or secondary graduation qualification. So, the program has been there for in Hong Kong for nearly 60 years, in a very strong partnership with Hong Kong Space. And you may have heard a lot about the program structure, etc. from my point of view as the program leader. But now we have different perspective from a outstanding alumni who will be sharing with you about his journey from his original field and also his study experience with Hong Kong Space on the program. So without further ado, may I welcome Mr. David Brown.
Thank you,
David,
Simon.
over here.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I know this talk is billed as me sharing my experience from my previous work in aviation to becoming a lawyer. But I'm not really sure how useful that is or how interesting that is going to be for most of you, because your journey is almost certainly going to be very different. So what I suggest is that I would like to share with you my 3 years of going through the LLB program, the mistakes I made, my observations, what I learned, how I prepared for the examinations, and how I got through the course. I think that will be a lot more practical for those of you that are attending this particular course. Would that be okay? Would you prefer that? Yeah? Okay, great. Okay, so, as I said, I used to work in aviation previously, in flight operations management. I got a bit bored with that, and I decided I needed a new challenge. So, I saw the LLB program, and I remember that actually many years ago, I had actually took the program, started year 1, but dropped out after the first year. And the reason for that was because I was very interested in criminal law, I was very interested in contract law, but when it came to constitutional law, or what is now called public law, I found it very dry, very boring. And I thought, okay, maybe this isn't for me. So I went and did a degree in some other discipline. So many years later, when I needed a new challenge, I saw the LLB program and I thought, okay, let's take it up. I've always been interested in the law. And surprisingly, the second time round, the subject that I enjoyed the most and found the most challenging was public law, right? So I started reflecting and thinking, what was the big difference, throughout those years? And I think for me, the realization was that the big difference was that I had matured as a person, and I had started to appreciate how important the law is in any society, or for citizens in any society to at least know what the law is, right? So it was a level of maturity or growth throughout the years that made the difference. So then I started looking at the way I'm going to approach the program the second time around, and I started comparing to the first time to see what the differences were, not only in myself, but also with my cohort. There was a couple of hundred of us that started the program at the same time. And I could see some of them were making the same mistakes I made. And I remember telling a lot of my classmates at the time was that one of the things we have to understand at this stage, we are not learning to be lawyers. We are learning how to pass an exam and get good grades. Because if you don't do that, you may not even have a chance to be a lawyer. Now, why is this important? Well, this is important because I think it affects how you approach the subject, how you learn the subject, and how you apply the subject. And I'll give you an example of this. In the early days, you know, especially in criminal law, you have this approach that, okay, there must be some smoking gun in this question that I need to look for, I need to identify, and that's going to change the whole case in my favor, right? This type of thinking is actually very much influenced by all the movies you see, the legal movies you see on TV or in the cinema. But real life is never like that. The law is actually a lot more straightforward, a lot more, how should I put it, more to the point, right? So it's about applying the legal rules that you learn, okay? So that's the first thing you have to understand, all right? There may never be a smoking gun, okay? It is simply learning the rules and applying the rules to the questions that is being asked, all right? So that's the way, I think, to have a realistic perspective of what you're going to be in for over the next couple of years in this journey. Now, each subject will have some basic principles that apply, some legal principles that apply to all the subjects, but the rules for each subject is very different. And what I found was that you need to read a lot. There's a lot of reading involved, but reading alone is probably not sufficient to score good grades. What I mean by that is because you need to understand the concepts, you need to remember the case names, you need to remember what the law is with regards to certain aspects. So the way I approached this was to what I call multisensory learning. So I would read the text first time, and then second time round for each topic in the text, I would draw my own flow charts or mind maps out. So I'm actually using basically different senses to learn the subject. And then for me personally, one of the techniques that I use to learn any subject, which I find really powerful, is that after learning the subject, I pretend to be a teacher and try to teach someone the subject. So I go through an explanation of what the subject is, and I think the benefit of that approach, at least for me, is that it forces me to think of the subject in a very clear, structured way. Because when you explain something to people, you need to explain it in a logical sequence rather than jumping all over the place, right? So that forced me to think of any topic or subject in a logical sequence. And I found that extremely useful and helpful for me to understand the subject and to really internalize the learning. I know a lot of people say there's a lot of memory work involved. You need to remember all these case names and the facts of the case. Yes and no. The reason I say yes is because yes, for every statement that you put down of law, you need to have an authority, so the authority will be the case name itself, so you need to remember that. However, no, because if you think about it, for every question, there's going to be maybe 5 or 6 points that they're trying to elicit. So there's only a handful of cases that you have to remember, and these will be the key cases. So it's not really that taxing from a memory point of view as some people believe it to be. It's, I think, more important to really understand the principle behind what the courts were trying to achieve in given a specific set of facts, and then applying that, simply applying that. Right? So the approach is very important. From my experience and my observations with my cohort, one of the issues is that a lot of students tend to leave the studying a bit late, almost towards after the mock exams in January and close to the revision time. But if you want to do well, you need to be ahead of the game. As I said, it's not only the reading, it's all the other work that you do, you're preparing your mind maps, your flow charts, all these extra bits that you do that help you really remember and understand what is being taught. So for me, at least for most of those 3 years, I was living the law almost 24 hours a day. I would record my lectures, and then when I'm taking a bus, taking the MTR, I would have my headphones on and I'm listening to the lectures. And if I come to something I don't know, I would question it, I would look it up. You know, rather than pick up a book like most people do and start from the beginning to the end, I would take a particular topic that I'm not sure of and I'll investigate that. And then, as I said, I'll then try to explain it to someone that doesn't understand the law. And if I can make them understand it, then I must have understood the concept, right? So it's all these extra bits that you do, and I did that because I'm really interested in the subject, so that helps, right? But I found it very useful in the exam. In the course, you will learn methodologies, how you can apply to approach essay questions or what they call fact pattern problem questions. And those methodologies are really sound, it's been around, and if you learn that early and apply the same processes to learning the law and studying, it'll actually help you a lot when it comes to taking the exam. I know the exams are online.
It was online for the past 3 years or so, but yeah, I don't know yet. It could be online, it could be in person.
Right, but I don't think it makes a difference to the two, at least from the student's perspective, because either way it's going to be closed book, so you need to go through the same process. But the great thing about being online is that you type out the answers. You don't write the answers. And the reason I say that, because as a teacher and someone that marks papers, one of the things that irks me is students whose handwriting is so poor that I can't really read what they're writing, right? And human beings, you'll lose marks because of that, whether fairly or not. So actually being able to type out your answer is probably, to me, I think, a blessing in disguise, all right? But that's a pretty minor point. So the next thing I want to suggest to most students, when you start on this journey, don't focus on the end, all right? The end's a couple of years away, all right? And don't waste your energy worrying about whether you're going to get there. Focus on each step at a time. So for year one, focus on the subjects you need to take now. Your focus should be on getting as high grades as possible. Get through that, then worry about the second year. Take it one step at a time. And I found that helped me a lot because it really took a lot of the pressure off. Whereas some of my classmates, you know, they were always worrying about whether I can score the grades, whether I can be a lawyer. And they spent so much time worrying about that they actually didn't make full use of the present time and learning the subject as best as they could. Right? So no need to put extra pressure on yourself, one step at a time, and then take it as it comes along. I think it's always very useful also to have a plan B. Plan B, by what I mean is that what happens if you can't become a lawyer? Let's say you don't get the grades that you need to qualify for the PCLL in Hong Kong. Well, I thought about that right from the start, and I was prepared to accept that. Well, first of all, you know, I considered being a lawyer as a bonus. My main purpose was to learn the subject, get the degree, all right, and then see what I can do. And actually, there are a lot of avenues open to people with a law degree. All right, a lot of my classmates at the time were not interested in becoming lawyers. Some of them worked in financial industry, in compliance areas. Some of them were law enforcement. So there are a lot of other different pathways that the degree can be really, really useful, I think, for students. So there's no need to put that extra pressure on yourself and that you have to achieve that end. But as I said, take it one step at a time. I personally think, having been through this, is that if I had known it earlier, I would have done it a lot earlier. I think everyone, every citizen in any society, it is important for them to understand the law because it affects their life and the people around them. So I think from that perspective, and that's how I approached it, I found it really useful. And there were some fascinating topics that if I didn't take it, I wouldn't even have understood that those requirements or they existed, such as tort, right? So the message I'm trying to get to you is that ask yourself why you're doing this, all right? And I don't think there should be only one reason. There are multiple reasons why everyone would want to get a degree or get a degree in the law, all right? That's even more specific. So I think it's important to really have a good sort of perspective of what you're doing, why you're doing it, and then plan your work accordingly, okay? I think the last part is probably the most important. There is plenty of time. You get your subject taught to you in the first couple of months, September, October, November, right? Exams are not until May, but now I think you have the luxury of either sitting for the exam in May or October. You have that choice, Back then in my time it was May. So actually, plenty of time if you prepare well. All right, if you wait until the last minute, it can be quite tough. Okay. Anyone have any questions that you'd like to ask right now?
Or even online, people can just type in your question in the little chat box, or we can take questions from the floor. Of course, David's sharing is extremely useful, in particular for students who are actually aiming at passing the subjects you're gaining. I really like your perspective of you study something, just something of your interest, and then you change your perspective. Actually,
yes,
you change your perspective as you imagine yourself as a teacher.
Exactly.
I really like that. I think it's a really effective and a very good advice as well.
Well, because to me is that if you can take something that is rather complex and explain it in really simple terms, you're either missing out on a lot of information, or you really understand it really well. All right, and I found that for me particularly useful to approach any subject that I learned, for that matter, not just the law. Right, you have a lot of resources right now available. On the VLE online. You get access to past question papers, and that's actually really important to go through the question. If you think about it as a subject matter, there are only so many ways or so many questions they can ask. Let me find. There are only so many questions that they can ask, but there are many different ways they can ask it. All right? So the words may change, but the idea is the same. The information that they want from you is probably the same. So going through past exam questions is actually a really important thing to understand what topics are important, what topics will be asked. Right? When you learn the law itself, you will find that there are some topics that are really straightforward. Some laws are very straightforward, no ambiguity at all. But there will be others where there could be some interpretation, there could be some ambiguity because of a recent case that throws some uncertainty into it. And if you think of it from an exam perspective, those will probably be the type of questions that you need to tackle really well to score the high marks. The straightforward legal questions will be there just to give you marks. There will be some of those. But the key ones are areas of the law where there's still some uncertainty that exists. It could go either way. It could be either very fact-specific or from a conceptual perspective of what the courts are trying to achieve in this particular. And it's important to really understand those, understand both sides of the argument, and then when you tackle a question that seems to refer to that area, reproduce that type of argument, that type of critical analysis of the topic, and then come to your conclusion, right? So again, when you study the law, try to highlight those areas where there is ambiguity and focus on making sure you understand that. The straightforward ones, that's a given. You should know that. All right. So the approach to preparing yourself actually is I think, very key to the results that you can achieve.
David, just pick on what you share with us about your very first experience in getting in touch with the London program, right? You said you actually going back to the 1970s,
yes.
When you first got enrolled in the program,
yes.
and etc. And then we came back again, after you earned your degrees from States and some, career, and then you came back, and the world has changed quite a lot.
Yes.
And then you have taught on the program of, for us, sharing with our students about your learning approach, exam preparation, etc. So how do you compare these three different stages, about the program and your experience?
Well, in the early stage, there was actually very minimal support. I remember I registered with London. They don't provide you with any books. They don't provide you with student guides. They just give you a name of certain outside independent, independent entities. I remember the one that I had to buy the books from was a company called Holborn Law Tutors, right? I think they are still around.
That's right.
Yeah. So you would then buy the books from them, and then you study the book, and then you show up for the exam. That was the extent of what was available first time round. Second time round, completely different. You have an online platform, you have the VLE, you have the textbook, you have the student guides. The student guides very important, right? Because the student guides almost tells you what the exam area will be covered, right? The textbook covers the topic quite comprehensively, but the student guide actually will be where the exam questions will come from. So you need to really know the student guide really well, and you need to read the text because it gives you a lot more information and background to understanding the topic, right? And then you are able to interact with other students, ask questions online, they have videos for you. So the support, I think, is tremendous today, especially for working people, right? The great thing about it is that you don't have to attend class on a regular basis. I think the taught part of the program is compressed into a couple of weeks, and then the rest you have online, which you can organize your own schedule around. So I think from that perspective, that made a big difference. Made life a lot easier, second time around.
But you took some courses with Hong Kong Space when you were preparing for the London program. How do you find the tuition and experience and the interaction with peers?
First of all, almost all the teachers came from the UK.
Yeah.
They were all very experienced, not only in the subject matter, but they were very good teachers. They really understood the topic and they could deliver it in a very, very easy to understand fashion. Right, so that itself was very useful, and that's all compressed over a couple of weeks. There are a lot of students, and I think what is important is that make friends with a group of students and then form your own study group, okay? And then you can share your ideas with people, and that's what I did. I had a group of about 4 or 5 of us. We had our own WhatsApp group. We would meet regularly. We would ask each other questions we don't understand. So there is that level of local support as well as the online support, right? And again, that is really, really useful.
Yeah, I think that's what I heard from a lot of students actually. When they are doing this program, the mutual, the study group support is definitely very important.
Exactly, because I think one of the issues is that if most of you are used to the education system in Hong Kong, then you're kind of basically in that mode where you're expected to attend class and you get fed information and then you sit up for the exam. But I think this type of learning environment is not that at all. You're expected to do a lot of the work yourself. So you're given the information, what you do with the information, how you use that information is basically up to you. So in that sense, it's important to have some sort of support group that you can bounce ideas off, share your ideas with, and then listen to each other. And then, if you get stuck, if you can't agree, go online, ask the questions online, and see what others do think. And basically, it's a really, to me, a really rich learning environment.
I think you can just get that from a teaching institute. Like you can't get those experiences from if you are just studying on your own.
Yes, exactly.
As an independent candidate, you only get those from being a student as well. With Hong Kong Space as well, right?
If you go through the whole program on your own, it's not impossible, but it is a lot more difficult, a lot more challenging. You have to be very disciplined, right? But it's not necessary. You don't have to do that. You should make use of the resources available to you online as well as within the students that you meet in class. Early on, form your group, challenge each other, discuss the topics, share your ideas, and then see how other people think, right? Because the law, in many ways, is a social science subject. So we're talking about human behavior, human beings, and sometimes there are different shades. So the more information you get from other people, how they see things, the better understanding you're going to have.
And David, I know you just earned your LLM from the University of Hong Kong, right? What specialism do you?
I did human rights.
Human rights,
yes.
okay. Is it fascinating?
Yeah, personal interest of mine. Rather topical right now, but it was, again, very fascinating subject.
Shall we talk a little bit about your qualifying as a lawyer? After your graduation with the LLB, you move on to PCLL, right?
Well, not right away, because what happened is that I did the LLB as a graduate entry, so you only do 9 subjects. right? And I did 3 subjects a year, so I spread it out over 3 years. And then after that, to qualify for the PCLL, you need to do that 11 or 12 core law subjects, right? So as a graduate entry to London, I was exempt from a few subjects for the LLB, but I had to redo those subjects or resit an exam for those subjects locally, right? And again, there is support from Hong Kong U for some of those subjects. Those tend to be the elective subjects, right? So for example, in London, the subjects that I did not take was the procedure, civil procedure or criminal procedure. And the reason I didn't do those subjects under London U was because I'm not going to practice in London, so no point learning the procedure. So I discarded that, and instead what I did was sat for the exams and learn civil procedure and criminal procedure for Hong Kong. So after you get your degree, if you have the core subjects, then there are 3 conversion exams that you must take, which is Hong Kong Basic Law, land law, because the land law in Hong Kong is different from the UK, and Hong Kong legal systems, because the legal systems are different. So those are 3 subjects that you must take if you are the standard entry route. If you're the graduate entry route, in addition to these 3, you need to take the subjects that you missed out in the LLB program, such as criminal procedure, civil procedure,
sometimes evidence,
evidence, you know, so you need to redo all that. But there's support for those programs run by Hong Kong U also. And then you sit the exam, and it's a pass-fail exam. So it's not like you need to get good grades again, right? So it's just a pass or a fail. Now, once you've completed the core subject requirements, then you can apply for the PCLL.
Right. You did your PCLL with
Chinese U, that's right. So there are 3 universities that provide PCLL.
Yes.
Hong Kong U, I think they have part-time as well as full-time. Chinese U and City U, I think, is full-time.
Yes.
Because I came to the law a bit late, I didn't want to waste more time, so I decided to do it full-time. Right? So that was the route that I took.
And then after that, you took your privilege.
Yes.
Right?
So after you finish your PCLL, actually at the last semester of the PCLL, you then decide whether you want to be a solicitor or a barrister, and this will determine some of the must-have subjects that you take at the PCLL level. I knew I wanted to be a barrister, so I had to take advocacy. And then after that, you come out, you write a lot of letters to all the different chambers, looking for seafood, right, that will be willing to take you under their arms, all right, either for 3 months or 6 months, right? And then that's where you get practical experience, where you will attend courts with them, you will really, get into learning how to approach handling clients, gathering information, researching the law, and then building up your strategy for how you're going to approach the case.
Right. Seafood actually means pupil master.
Yeah, pupil
right?
master.
But
right.
I think in the profession they use it to call them seafood.
Seafood.
Yeah. So very, very interesting, right? Now, I think at this point, let's see if you have any questions from the floor, from you attending physically or people online. Yes, please.
What was your main initiatives to shift from one industry to the legal?
Well, I was in aviation. I have always been the type of person that pursued things that I was interested in. I never did anything because my parents wanted me to do that or society expected me to do that. I always did things that I was interested in. And the law was always something I was very interested in. All right? It's just that, as I told you the first time around, my first experience with constitutional law, I guess I was very young at that time, so I found it really dry. All right? I couldn't understand or appreciate how important constitutional law actually is. All right? And so I decided, okay, let's try something else. But in the back of my mind, the law is always visible to every citizen. You see it every day in the news, especially criminal law. In Hong Kong for the last few years, there are a lot of constitutional issues. So you're always bombarded with actual legal issues. One of the great things for me, at least about education is that it helps you see the world in a different light. There are a lot of things happening around us that we don't know because we don't have the knowledge. But when you have some knowledge about the subject, you will see it completely different, right? So it was something that I put at the back of my mind, but I never forgot about it. I was always interested in it. So when I got to the point where I was close to retirement from my aviation job, and I'm not the type of person that can sit around and just go yum cha every day and call up friends and find something to do. I needed something mentally stimulating, and also I decided, okay, let's go back to the law, right? So that's how I decided to try it again a second time, and I have no regrets. I'm very grateful that I have an opportunity to start a completely second career in an area that I'm also very interested in.
I know you got a certificate for your outstanding results got from public law. You know, your performance in public law.
Okay.
How was that?
Well, okay. So what happens in the London LLB program is that they break up into zones and different countries, and for each subject, the student that scored the highest mark in that country actually get a certificate of merit for that. And as I said, surprisingly, the subject that I detested the most first time round, the second time round was the subject that I scored the distinction in, scored the highest mark, and got a certificate of merit for that in public law.
I think it's quite an experience to share because, public law, constitutional law, we are not living in that context, right? You are talking about UK constitutional history, background, institution, which is actually, very remote, and we are living in Hong Kong. How could you do that? I mean, now, I remember you said we have to be realistic and pragmatic in preparing the examinations. We're going to pass the examination instead of something bigger than that. So how do you prepare? Is there any hints for students who are preparing for the public law examinations? How can you do that?
Well, I think for me, for any subject, I think it's important to distinguish between the concept behind the subject and the details, right? So the details of how the English constitutional framework, say compared to Hong Kong, compared to the US, is very different. The details are different. But the concepts are not that different. There's some underlying principles that apply, all right? So, as I said, the important thing for me when I approach any subject is to try to put some structure around the subject. And one of the ways to do that for me was to separate what is the concept, what is it trying to achieve, and what the details are, right? So I always, I'm what I call myself a top-down learner, right? It's like, I look at it like building a jigsaw. There's two ways you can build a jigsaw. You can have all the pieces scattered in front of you and try piecing it up and then see what you end up with. Or you can take a look at what the picture is first and then you build it from that. And I'm very much the second type. I need to see the picture first and then I can put in the pieces together. So the way I approach every subject is that I try to say, okay, what is the concept here? So for public law, you've got concept. It's about the relationship between the citizen and the government. It's about power sharing. It's about checks and balances on the government, right? How to achieve that. So those are basic principles that you will find in any constitution or in any country. How it's actually applied may be quite different. But understanding, I think, the overall framework and structure, for me, is very important. And it helped me a lot.
Very useful advice, actually. Concepts, details.
Yes, that's right.
Relationship clear, etc. Any more questions from the floor? I think David will be happy to share with you from his experience.
Did you find the journey frustrating or interesting, and any difficulties you find on this journey?
Well, for me, I've always found in all my education, the journey was much more fun, more interesting than the destination. Actually, the day you stand up there and get your degree is not exciting at all. It's actually quite frustrating, sitting in a big hall, waiting, and then for that one moment, all right? when you look back, most people will find, it was that 3-year journey that you took. You know, the showing up for classes, the meeting with your friends, the readings, the trying to understand, and if you don't, asking people. It's, to me, that journey is always the most exciting part. You know, and I enjoy that a lot. I really treasure that a lot. And as I said, what helped me enjoy it is because I didn't really focus on the destination. I didn't really worry about where I was going to end up. You know, I just focused on what I was doing now, all right, and making sure I did my best, and then just took it one step at a time, literally one step at a time, and to see where it would lead me. And I think that helped me a lot.
Very important piece of advice.
So I mean, you know, it's as a person, I'm always, if I want to do something, I don't overthink it. I just say, oh, let's just go for it. And if I fail, I'll ask myself, did you fail because you didn't try your best? And if the answer is yes, then I will do it again, right? But if I fail despite giving it my best, then I'll accept it. Well, okay, maybe this is not meant to be, and I'll move on to something else.
Yeah.
Right. So, I think it's important, and probably for most adults, is understanding yourself along the way. You know, how you approach problems, how disciplined you are, and trust me, discipline is very important in anything. You know, in life, if you want anything that's worth doing, has to be done properly, and that requires discipline.
Right.
You know? So if you can organize your time well, if you can stick to a schedule, and have the discipline to see it through, I think it's very easily doable.
Yeah, that's good. Yes. Any more questions? Yes, please.
I'm not interested in becoming a lawyer or solicitor or barrister, but I'm interested in studying law.
Right.
And probably I would like to study like very slowly or just too easy. So do you have any suggestion?
Well, I think that's a really good approach, right? Because you're interested in the subject. You're not interested in what the subject can bring to you, right? So I think that's to me, I think that's a really, really healthy approach. And because you have this approach, then basically I think you have the luxury of trying to fit the subject into your schedule. Now, I'm not sure, but back in my time, there was a 6-year time limit. Does that still apply?
6 years.
Yeah, you've got 6 years to finish your LLB. All right. And either way, it's either 2 subjects a year in the standard entry, or one, maybe 2. You know,
it's more flexible actually
that's right,
now
exactly.
than
That's right.
your time. Yes.
So if that's your purpose, I would suggest you to basically take it as slow as you like, but learn each topic really well. Because as I found, in every subject that I learned, it's fascinating. There are things that you don't really realize what's actually happening until you come across it. And every subject in law is actually really fascinating. You know, but even when it comes to the procedure subjects, the criminal procedure, the civil procedure, I cannot explain it. You know, to someone, when you go into it, you really start to understand everything you hear in the news, everything you read in newspapers or in books. You will be able to see what is the truth and what is rubbish, you know, and it's fascinating, you know, and I think that's a really healthy way to take it, you know, fit it around your schedule, learn each subject as best as you can, understand that, you know, I mean, for me, one of the things I ask myself is that why do we need law? You know, why does the society, what's the purpose of the law? Can we function as a society without law? Actually, the answer is yes. The question is, what type of society will we end up having without laws, right? So in many ways, for me, the law actually is a value system, right? The type of society that you have is reflected in the type of laws that you have, right? So from that perspective, you know, if you take it from that perspective, I think you will find the journey really, really fascinating.
Yeah, it's still a 6-year program, but it's very flexible in a way. You don't need to pay the whole lot of money for the whole program. You just do it bit by bit, pay as you go, and then focus on what you're interested in. Maybe our students normally would take it like 2 to 3 subjects every year. If you're on a graduate route, it takes you about 3 to 4 years to as what David said, you find your interest and you focus on it and do it well. I think that's what all about.
Actually, the great thing now is that you have the option of taking the exam in either May or October.
Yes, there are
So-
2 windows.
So even if you do 3 subjects, if I had the option back then, I would definitely split my exams up, do the 2 easier ones first and leave one until October. So there's a lot of flexibility, I think, in the way the program is run now.
I think back in your time, you are also required to pass all level 4 subjects
Before
at
you
one
move
go,
on, yes.
right?
Well,
Yes.
before you move on to the level 5
Right,
or 6,
yes.
yes, that's right.
There's still a little bit flexibility there when you are doing program now. You have some flexibility in terms of arranging your courses. It's totally very student-centered, modular-based. So
Yes.
and we have, as you know, in David's sharing, we of course your efforts are important, the planning important, your interest important, but we've got all the support now.
That's
a lot
right.
of better support. We've got great tuition from UK teachers, and to be frank, I think every year we receive quite a number of students sent by the government. Actually, the government sent students from different departments to study on our program. I think that would, because we're here for a long time, nearly 60 years with good teachers, good teaching quality, and it's a prestigious program, right? I think you at the end you get something really worthwhile.
It's a very well respected degree worldwide.
Yeah, right. But lead you to a lot of different possibilities, not just legal practice, but other good possibilities. Any more questions?
What students online? Any questions? No.
They're very silent. I'm still expecting your question from online participants. Let's see if you have any further questions. And perhaps allow me to just very briefly introduce the program. We have, the LLB program. If you're on a graduate entry route, just like what David did, you do 9 subjects, 9 modules over 6 years to maximum. Normally students will finish it within 3 or 4 years. And if you are on the standard entry route, you do 12 subjects. If you do not have a formal qualification yet, but you are of the age of 18 years or above, you think you're ready for degree studies, and you're really interested in it, you can try to do the certificate of higher education in common law. Okay, that at the end will give you, if you pass, it is an award on its own, but if you pass, you still have the possibility of transferring to the LLB second year. Okay, that is level 5, because in that certificate, you will probably have finished all the level 4 subjects as required by the LLB program. So it is a very open kind of program, open entry. You can enter at different points depending on your position, on the qualifications you have. Okay, and the 2 very core purposes of the LLB program is, first, it will develop your interest and critical awareness of the common law jurisdiction, common law tradition, which actually is a very influential legal tradition in the world. Okay, many jurisdictions are based on the common law tradition. Second thing is the critical thinking skills, problem-solving skills that you will develop through the program. Okay, these skills are useful not just in legal setting, but also in non-legal setting, as what David has shared. Live.
In
We
life,
are
yeah.
so influenced
That's
by law. So these are all very, very useful skills and knowledge that you can gain from the program. Okay. So,
So just want to ask, what is the minimum requirement for the entrance for the certificate, the higher diploma?
the certificate of higher education in common law, it is just like somewhat like a foundation here if you compare to other programs. Okay, there's no formal requirement. The only requirement would be you are 18 years or above. and you have to pass an entrance test plus an interview. That's it. But we would, there are attendance requirements, and those will be kept for the purpose of the university. So you must do it through a teaching center, the recognized teaching center like HKU space. Okay? And it takes you, we have offer you a two-year package, so you do 4 subjects over 2 years. Again, you will have classes tuition together with the LLB students, taught by outstanding UK law teachers. The thing about this is a kind of open entry program, which is also an award on its own. So you can just read after 2 years. If you think law may not be your thing, okay, you want to move on to something else, that is in itself an award by the University of London. Okay. Any further questions?
For one of the legal programs, one is the graduate diploma in English and Hong Kong law.
Yes.
Is that a good foundation for the LLB program? Or
Yes.
isn't it necessary?
Well, that is a what we call a fast track to legal practice, if I may say. Previously, it was called a common professional examinations. It requires you to do just 7 core subjects as required by the qualified professional body. It's basically coming from the UK, from England and Wales, to be precise. If you want to become a solicitor or barrister. But the landscape is actually changing. In England and Wales, if you are aiming to become a solicitor, there's no more requirement of a qualified law degree. So you don't need an LLB. Any LLB and any degree can do. You just pass the HKU, the solicitor's qualifying examination. It's a 2-stage examination. Okay, you do the preparation course, and some institutions even offer postgraduate diploma to prepare students to do that past HKU. But for barrister, you're still required to do a qualifying law degree, like an LLB, okay? And then you fulfill the 7 core subjects required. Back in Hong Kong, we still have that fast track, the postgraduate diploma, the GDL, okay, the graduate diploma in law, okay? That if you are doing that with Hong Kong Space, we have another program that would leave you, it's still a fast track. You don't need to pass the conversion stage, just what David has done before, because he's holding an LLB from overseas. London LLB is regarded as a British degree, English degree from overseas. So you still need to pass the conversion stage in order to meet the eligibility requirement for the application of the CLM program. So it's different. It all depends on actually what your ultimate aim is. The London will give you a broad choice of career options. Like if you are not, you can still rely on it to do the PCLL or SQE in England and Wales, bar course in England and Wales, or even rely on it to get admission to the bar association in Canada or wherever, okay? Depending on whether that jurisdiction accepts London's qualification as the foundation. But you can do it, okay, if you are not thinking about legal practice, it's still okay. Or I have a law degree from London, prestigious university, and I can do it. Yeah, that can be a very good career enrichment as well. People use that to enhance their career. Yeah, a lot of students. Even on our program, we've got not just senior civil servants, we've got PhD holders, we've got policy analysts, we've got medical doctors. Okay, we've got fresh school leavers. So it's a very diverse cohort of students every year.
So just
Yes.
out of curiosity, is there any limitation of age to become a solicitor or barrister?
No,
Let's say if
as long as
someone
you're
is
alive.
60, can they still become a lawyer? Or?
Yeah, no limitation. As long as you meet all the qualification
Yes.
requirements,
Yeah.
you can register.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Okay, we have a question. We have a question from the online audience. Would there be any tips on digesting the textbooks? Okay. Any tips on how we can digest all the textbooks?
Well, I think actually the more important one to understand first is the study guide. Right? The study guide basically
got some here.
Yeah, here.
Yeah, this one.
London U provides for every subject a study guide to the students. As I said, why that is important is because the exam will focus on what is in the study guide. Right? The text may contain a lot more information, a lot more areas that may be outside of the exam scope. So focus on the study guide and then supplement that with the text.
Yeah. They now provide online version instead of physical edition. Everything is put online in a virtual learning environment. So when you accept it to the program, you've got the status, student status, as University of London student. That is rated worldwide. Even though if you're relocating, you still have that status. You can go to a certain recognized teaching center somewhere in a certain country, in a city. You can still get support there if you buy the program, etc. But the virtual learning environment is still there. You can access it around the clock, no time limit. Everything is put online.
Actually, the best tip I can give you is to make use of the time well.
Yes.
Right? If you don't have time, then focus on the study guide.
Yeah.
Right? And that's what students that leave the studying to the very last minute tend to do. All right? If you have a bit more time, finish the study guide, go on to the text.
Yeah.
If you have even more time, by starting as early as possible, finish the study guide, finish the textbook, and then go and look on other online or other areas on specific topics that give you even more background in the area that you're interested in. Right? So it's very much a function of how you make use of your time.
Yeah. Normally, my formula would be like this. My advice to students would be like this. Now, London advises students to spend 8 hours per week on one single subject. Okay. If you translate that into something workable daily, that would be slightly more than an hour every day. If you can afford to free up like 1 hour every day to do your study, in the coming year, you have the capacity of doing one subject. That's all thing, okay?
Well,
so,
actually, it's a lot easier today because just to share with you what I did, as I said, I recorded lectures. I don't know. I use an Android phone, and an Android phone you can actually get a software to read text to you. So I would scan in pages and books and PDFs, and then if you look at most people, travel to work, from work, you're on public transport, so you're a captured audience just sitting there. So rather than listen to music or stare blankly into space, I make use of all that time to listen to the text through my headphones, all right, or I take my book with me, my study guide, and I read that. So I'm using actually time available during my day when I'm basically not doing anything to revise this, and it easily, you can spend more than 8 hours on the subject per week.
Sure. Yeah. But actually, efforts finally paid off. I think, you'll see it.
Well, and the reason is because I'm interested. So interest is very important. If you're not really interested in it, then basically you need to develop a methodology that is going to give you that information. It's very much immersing yourself in the subject matter. So as I said, those 3 years, everything I listened to, everything I read was all about the law.
Yeah. You see, efforts important, interest important.
And make use of the tools available. I mean, if you need to take a bus, if you need to take MTR, why waste the time, right? Have the text available and have the software read it back to you. You can stop it, think about it, rewind it. It's a great way to learn.
Yeah. Okay, so let's see if we have any further question. The final call? No? So if not, please join me to give a round of big applause to Mr. David Brown. Okay, thank you very much for the very extremely useful sharing and the tips, everything.
I hope you found it useful.
Yeah, thank you. And I hope to see you at some point on our program. Thank you so much. We've got some brochures out there, and if you are interested, you can have a look and flip through of these manuals as well. Okay, thank you very much. And thank you very much to the online audience. Hope to see you at some point. Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.